and thank you for joining us for this episode of The State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. That is Robert Hilliard. I am Whitney Wiley, and we are here on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific, talking all things leadership. And it is the second Thursday of the month, which means we're talking about things that are in the news. And today, we're going to do just that. So, one of my greatest joys is when a study confirms something that I already know to be true. It feels like a double victory because I'm correct and I don't have to personally fund or conduct the study. So, I'm just saying.
That's funny.
I'm just saying, right? And I'm sure when you were reading the study and the articles, Robert, you were like, duh.
Well, yeah, it's funny. I always have to be careful because and remind myself that we learned these things. These aren't things like some of them may seem like common sense and that we've been doing them for a long time, but it's like, oh yeah, we learned about this stuff. So yeah, that was my reaction. Like was like, oh, this makes sense. We
Yeah.
know this. This is stuff that we talk about. And I think that one of the things that may catch some people up, and I don't know for sure, I know we've had comments in the past, is that because we don't always approach this from a sciencey kind of way, that this is just some feel good. No, that's not what this is. It's based on decades of research.
Right. And what I find really interesting, and we'll get into the study in just a minute and talk about a couple of articles that reference the study. But what really resonated with me, I think, outside of the study is the notion that knowing your employees, knowing what's important to them, knowing what they value, right, is the key to the engagement, their happiness, productivity, all the stuff that you want or maybe you don't even know that you want, but it leads to what you do want, which is an improved and healthy bottom line.
Yeah.
Right. And that's ultimately what we're talking about. That's the whole purpose of working to be more effective in your leadership, right? And from a business perspective, is getting you what you want, which is a healthy bottom line. But the way you get there isn't by cutting, treating people like crap.
I was gonna say cogs in a wheel, but cogs in a machine. But
I was gonna say, does cogs in a machine have an acronym that spells crap? We need to come up with cogs.
We will.
To come up with one that gets you there.
Yeah.
But right, that's not the path to your healthy bottom line. Or to the bottom line that you're looking for. You really want to do it in a way that works for both the organization and your employees, your team members, because you're a team. So with that, enough of my jokes for today. So we're going to be looking at a study by CanGrade, and there are two articles by CanGrade that reference the study, and then an article by Korn Ferry. I'll put the link for all three so that you can reference them directly, or you can just take our word for what it says. But they look into the themes of employee satisfaction and some things that they've noticed with generational differences. And the overall summary is that there's a strong relationship between employee happiness and productivity, and that organizations can benefit from investing in strategies to improve employee well-being, which is one of the values that Gen Z has, is their wellness. And so if you can create an environment, a culture that supports that, then you will go a long way towards turning what many see in Gen Z as sort of them not wanting to work, them not being invested. Problem isn't that they don't want to be, it's that they're valuing something that they're not getting. And when they don't get it, they'll leave. And we've talked about this a number of times. We talked about it when we were talking about the Great Resignation, right? And what was happening, paying attention to the value, what your employees are valuing. We talked about this when quiet quitting was all all the rage, right? Well, why are they quiet quitting instead of being up in arms about the symptoms? Get to the root of what's creating that. And this is, I think, a study that goes towards helping you to understand that the what Gen Z is looking for. And the good news, I think, is that what they're looking for, while that may not be the highest priority of the other generations in the workplace, it will actually benefit them as well.
Right. It's still a priority. It's just not as high up in those with those other generations. What I think is very interesting when I was looking at this were the generational aspect of it,
Mhm.
and also the focus on Gen Z. So we talk about what they care about. They want to feel that they're making a difference in the world and in their lives. They want to make sure they have some balance, all those things. And the other aspect of it is the generational part of it. And this is pretty funny, because I remember having a conversation with a former boss, and I worked in HR for many years, and although I did mostly OD work, there was a time when I was asked to help with recruiting and things like that, and really redesign the policies and procedures in the organization.
Mm.
And I remember one of the policies was no visible tattoos, and I was like, well. The younger generation, they have tattoos. Lots of them have many tattoos, and at the same time, this person, the head of the department, was complaining that we can't seem to get these folks to come in. I'm like, well, look at your rules, look at your policies and procedures. If you're saying no tattoos, and that generation happens to have, they don't have the same, I don't want to say phobia, but it's not as taboo as it was for those other generations, then you're going to have a problem attracting them. And then the other part that they would engage in was the bait and switch. So they would say, okay, you can come on. And then when they got the job, you need to cover up all those tattoos. So it's just really interesting, the generational aspect of it. And of course, this head of this department was a baby boomer, and was using that lens to look at things, the way their values, the baby boomer values,
Right.
clean shaven. That's another thing. Look at the younger generations and how they wear facial hair. Older generations didn't do that. And I'm going to stop talking soon. But what I think is really funny is how a lot of these things back in the day were seen as only people that the criminal element, but now everybody does it. So it was really interesting reading this article.
The other thing, talking about the generations, is that each generation is seen as being like bucking the system and the values that were in place, right, as they are coming of age. And so the things that it's interesting that you said baby boomers, they're the ones that in the 60s or so were, right, that all counterculture and how dare you, and now that they're in charge, we're in charge, right? It's kind of like looking at someone else's values and the things, particularly aesthetically, And it's like, what does that have to do with getting the work done? Right. And some of the questions that ultimately need to be asked, which is this having an impact on work performance? And if it isn't having an impact on work performance, what does it matter? Right. And it's the same question that we asked when we were talking about the great resignation and return to work policies and all the like. If it isn't impacting getting the work done, can't why not let go a little bit and at least explore what it takes to get where it is your people want to go? Because if not you, someone else who's embracing that, right, will end up with your employees. Or you're constantly asking, why can't we retain? Yeah, we can hire, but we're not retaining.
Well, yeah. When you pull the bait and switch, when you tell people, oh yeah, you have the job, and then like, oh, now you have all these things wrong. We don't like your haircut. We don't like your beard. We don't like your tattoo. Well, that was okay. And it's really the funny thing. I was reading a book, and one of the things said that, recruiting is like dating, getting hired is like the marriage.
That's funny.
But it's true, and then that's how a lot of organizations treat their recruiting.
Yeah.
That you woo them in and then you change them. No, hire the person as they are, and they'll be happier and you'll be happier.
That's true. As you were mentioning, that made me think of my time at Disney. I worked at Disney in the early 80s. So Disney had been around for quite some time. But the no nail you couldn't wear nail polish unless it was flesh colored. You couldn't have earrings that dangled, no facial for the guys, no facial hair, had to be, cut short and all of that. I haven't been to a Disney in a while, but I want to say the last time I was there, none of that seemed to seem to apply anymore.
It
So,
gets yeah.
and in the end, it's like, what does it matter? And particularly for those employees who were in costumes that cover, it's like no one's going to see them. What does it matter?
Exactly.
What does it matter? So with that, what are the studies, and what is the study, and what do the studies say? So CanGrade did a study looking at what makes employees happy, right? That we're talking about workplace satisfaction and happiness. And then there was a component that got into this generational difference, the generational differences. And from that, there were a couple of articles that CanGrade published, and then Korn Ferry, which is a recruiting firm, or at least the recruiting arm of Korn Ferry, also wrote an article. Again, I'll make those available. And the overall summary, again, is that there's a strong relationship, right, between happiness, satisfaction, and productivity. And that makes sense, right? If you've got employees that are not happy and they are distracted with other things happening in their lives, or with what's happening in the organization or not happening, it's going to have an impact on whether or not they are productive in their work. And then younger workers being less satisfied in their jobs than older workers, and that makes some sense as well. If what the workplace, if what that organization is focused on in terms of values is something that doesn't resonate with them. If you're worried about tattoos and facial hair and things that don't have anything to do with what the younger generation is interested in, then right, you're going to miss that. And then Robert mentioned wanting to have work that is meaningful to them, that is fulfilling. And we have been seeing, and Robert can talk to this, one of his We talked about great man theory in the last episode when we were talking about um, leverage and sort of the evolution of where we've come from. Um, if you are stuck in a management style from a bygone era, it makes it difficult for you to be concerned with whether or not the work is meaningful, right? If we're talking cogs in a wheel, it's really difficult for you to be concerned with whether or not someone finds the work particularly satisfying or not, whether or not they're happy in it and therefore productive. Here's an interesting thing. I was doing some training recently, and the training was dealing with unacceptable behaviors by employees, and it touched on the training was centered around exactly this. I hadn't looked at the study at the time that I put the training together, and worked with my client putting this training together, uh, but it just makes sense, right? It just makes sense if you are focused in two different directions, and you are got work that is meaningless for someone rather than meaningful. They're going to have a difficult time being fulfilled by it or finding happiness or satisfaction in it. And in the one of the training sessions that I had, one of the trainees was talking about his particular work environment and their approach to hiring, which I feel uh, was directly leading to all the problems that they were having with employees, which they have extremely high turnover, a very quick turnover rate, high turnover, and a lot of dissatisfaction in the job, which was resulting in lots of behaviors, noticeably or notably absenteeism and tardiness, right? People just not wanting to come to work, not showing up to work. And then to compound all of that, the reaction of management to those behaviors was such that there was no real consequence. So I'm going to get paid. I'm going to get paid the same as everyone else. I am, there's no real incentive for doing well, doing better, doing above and beyond because everyone's getting the same thing. And I'm looking around saying, if I do what you've asked me to do at the rate that you've asked me to do it, and the person next to me is neither being punished, and I'm actually taking on more because they're not doing.
Yeah.
Is there any wonder that people where it is like this revolving door? Management is not involved, or the supervisors who are managing the employees, they're not involved in their hiring. It's handled separately, all by HR, and sort of they hire people and then they send them to do this work, which isn't particularly difficult. But my understanding, they're well paid and there are opportunities for advancement, which is one of the things we'll talk about that has come from the study, that is what you can do to help stave off some of the problems that come about when your employees are not satisfied in their jobs.
Yeah, there's so many things that you were saying that were bringing a whole lot of stuff up to the surface.
I hope it wasn't triggering for you.
No, it wasn't triggering for me. I'm over it. I'm over it. But one of the things that popped up when you said that was that there are a lot of managers who are still managing from the industrial management type of framework, which is command and control a lot. And that's how organizations reward. They reward by giving more control, right? but control is not necessarily a good thing all the time. And, or it needs to be tempered with something else. The other portion of it is, the other thing that popped up was when you are micromanaging an employee or being overly directive with an employee, it creates tension in that employee. When you allow employees to be, for lack, we're talking about happiness, happy, they are less tense.
Yeah.
And so if you remove everything from this, remove the leadership theory, remove leadership from this whole equation, and do an experiment with yourself, a physical experiment with yourself. Do any physical activities by tensing all your muscles up and see how effective you will be.
Mm.
And then relax those muscles and see how much more effective. It's just a rule of nature. But when it comes to management and leadership, we tend to value control over everything else. And you feel that if I am not checking in and being the overlord of my employees, then they're not working. But I will say it also goes in the other direction. You have some managers who do nothing, and that's not good either. So you need to strike that balance. I had a manager once that literally stayed in their office all day and wouldn't talk to anybody, unless it was about what came on HBO or whatever. But it was just, very rarely. The only time this person really got mobilized was if there was a problem. And then it was an all hands on deck kind of thing, help me out of this thing. But mostly it was no communication. People did whatever they luckily the department was sufficient and knew what they needed to do because we cared about our jobs. But this person was laissez-faire all the way.
Wow.
And it was kind of astonishing to be involved in that, because you could go 2 weeks with just in the office the entire day, didn't take lunch either.
Wow. Yeah, and we're going to talk about that, right?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Wow. And we'll talk about that in the context of setting examples and mental health, which is one of the things that's important to the Gen Z younger workers. So I want to just mention the 3 articles. Again, I will link them, but one is research reveals that happy workers are more productive, right? That's by CanGrade. And that article discusses the findings of the study. They did the study on the relationship between employee happiness and productivity, finding that happier workers tend to be more productive and that organizations can actually benefit from investing in strategies to improve employee well-being. The second article is what you should know about generational happiness at work. It's also by CanGrade, and that one focused on the generational differences in the workplace happiness, discussing how younger workers tend to be less satisfied with their jobs than older workers. And that's due to a number of factors, including differences in expectations and work styles, right? So that tells us, and we'll get into this, the importance of communications, right? If there's a difference in expectations and work style, there's probably some communication that's not happening where expectations are articulated and then some changes being made to adapt for that. And what we can tell you is that management theory, management actions, workplace cultures is constantly evolving. And so it's been evolving. It will continue to evolve. You can go along or you can choose not to, right? But it is a choice. And then the third one is why are younger workers unhappy? That one's by Korn Ferry. And it just gets into the reasons why younger workers may not be happy in the workplace, tapping into the same discussion as the second CanGrade. And that there are opportunities for organizations to adapt to the differences to create a more positive work environment for younger employees. So the question becomes, what are you going to do with this information? What can you do? And we've got some specific things that you can do. Not going to just talk about this in a vacuum. Um, some of it is stuff that we've been talking about over the entire course of the program. Some of it we talk about more than others. But the bottom line is to have to get some clarity about what it is that you want, right? Beyond getting the work done, what do you want? And does what you want include having a happy, healthy, productive workforce? Right. And if that's your vision, if that is the ultimate goal, then it will be much easier for you to incorporate some of these changes into what you're doing. This also happens to be Mental Health Awareness Month. And so I'm going to start there by talking about having a proactive approach to mental health by offering employees resources and support, such as mental health programs, mental health days, and access to mental health professionals. So, a lot of companies, particularly larger ones, will have an EAP and will have health healthcare, right? That will include access to mental health professionals. And it's something that if that is not a part of your offering, part of your benefits packages and whatnot, something that would be worth you looking into.
Yeah. Excellent.
It is important to train your employees, train your leaders, and train your employees to make sure that leaders and employees are identifying and addressing mental health issues, right? This is not to say that you should be inviting employees to tell you all you're not the mental health professional, so we're not telling you to solve their problems, but you've got to look at what you're doing in the workplace that is supporting a positive mental health, positive wellness overall, mental, physical wellness overall. What kinds of things are you doing? And some of that is about work-life balance. It is about flexible work schedules, right? Making sure people have access to, again, EAPs, if that is something that you can make happen. Bringing speakers in, right? And so something that could be helpful would be bringing in speakers and programs. There are lots of things that you can pay for, but there are other opportunities that you can bring in where people are maybe testing things out, and you can have them come in and just share what it is they're doing, what kinds of outcomes they're looking for, and see if it's something that meshes with what you're doing.
Those are great suggestions. I like them all.
It's important to have open communication, right? That it's okay to talk about mental health and well-being in general. Again, this is not about you digging into your employees, lives in terms of, what's going on with them. There are all sorts of HIPAA and other rules and privacy things that are happening, but having conversations in general, right? Making it a safe environment for employees to share in general what they're struggling with. Because if you know what they're struggling with, then you can figure out what kinds of resources you can actually make available for them. It's hard to help someone solve the problem if you don't know, one, that there is a problem, and two, what that problem is. And so, inviting again professionals in. When I was, well, I'm still a lawyer, but one of the big challenges that lawyers have is a high rate of alcoholism, drug abuse, right? A very stressful job, and a lot of pressure leads people to drinking and using drugs. And one of the things that the bar, at least here in California, I imagine throughout the country, but at least throughout California, is making is having discussions about that. We actually have to have, biannual training about substance abuse, and whether you have a problem or not, right? So that you can understand the stressors of the job, the resources that are available, and then hopefully people make themselves avail themselves of those resources, right? You can bring people in that would talk about those sorts of challenges in general, not for a one-on-one counseling session with someone in particular, but someone who would come in and share about those challenges, and then where they could go to get resources. So, if you are open to it and will talk to employees about what the challenges are, what they need, and then get creative, you can find solutions that you can bring in to be helpful for them.
Yeah, I mean, your most valuable resource in any organization is the human resource, and you want to make sure that you're. I know the term care and feeding went out of fashion a long time ago, but it's still relevant. That you're taking care of your people, you're making sure that they know that you're taking care of them, and that you appreciate the work that they do. I think that's really important. And then of course you can add all the other things that we're talking about, allowing them to have a sense of purpose with their job and connected to something bigger than themselves. That also goes a long way.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about that a little more. I want to just circle back around to something you said, which was about taking breaks, right? Lunch.
Yes.
And not just telling someone during onboarding, right? You've got 2 15-minute breaks and half an hour for lunch or hour for lunch or whatever you do. And then while they legally have the ability to do that, you don't really create a culture where that's possible.
Yeah, that
right?
happens a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you have to walk the talk, and you've got to lead by example, which is the other side of that. So if leaders are not taking breaks, they're not going to lunch, they're always at their desk, they're behind closed doors, it's going, you're sending the message that that's the way that this is done, that's the only way to succeed here, and therefore your employees are going to do that as well, creating additional stress and leading to burnout. So if you want to prevent that, you've got to create a culture where you are encouraging your employees to take breaks. There are things that you can do collectively as well as individually, encouraging your employees to go out together if you're in safe neighborhoods and when the weather's nice, to go out for walks. Nothing or very few things are as healthy as getting out in fresh air and sunshine, moving your body, right? And 15-20 minute walk, come back in, you're reinvigorated and able to work and be more productive in that. And setting an example, being a model of that is really important.
Yeah, I agree. All those things, and you don't have to do all. But let me backtrack. You don't have to do all of those things, even though all of those things are good. You can do some of them. See what works for you. It's the same thing when we talk about rewards and recognition. People always think money. Not necessarily.
Right.
So look, money's great. I love money, but I don't want people to think I don't. But But there are other things that employers can do that can, to reward people and to
Absolutely.
recognize people. So
And
I think it's important to think about those things.
absolutely. And you can create really low cost, do a Google search. You can create really low cost wellness incentive programs where you encourage people to be more active and to take their breaks and whatnot, and incentivize that, right? You can gamify it, make it fun, make it interesting, and see if that doesn't turn things around. I want to make sure we get to this point because you brought it up. It was part of the survey, that's part of the study, and this concept of purposeful work, right? And it's important. I think it's important to everyone. Again, Robert mentioned it's varying degrees. It seems to be high on the priority list for Gen Z. It's important, I believe, for everyone, but very high on the list for Gen Z. And so, what is it that Gen Z wants? They want work-life balance. They want career development, right? They want opportunities to grow in their career. So that means making sure they get appropriate mentors. And access to mentors, or encouraged if you don't have an internal mentor program, that they are encouraged to seek mentors elsewhere. Training, mentoring, coaching, right? Development opportunities, helping them to grow in their career and let go of the concern that if you develop them, they will go. If you don't develop them, they will go.
The
Right?
opposite is true. I know it sounds contradictory, but if you develop them, they will stay.
Right? And if you don't develop them and they stay and they're unproductive, you'll probably be wishing that they left. So,
Yeah.
right. So invest in them, develop them, and make sure that the work is purposeful in terms of making sure that it's clear what the purpose and mission of your organization is, and help them to see how their values, their purpose, their mission, their goals align, right? And that may take some work on your part to sit with them, but if you can help them see what they're doing and how it matters to the overall mission and purpose of what you're doing. And this goes back to hiring, right? You want to make sure that you're hiring in the first instance people that are in alignment with what you're doing, and then making sure you're reiterating that over time.
Yep. Yes. Very good. Very good.
Let's see. I want to make sure that I've covered. And again, I think I'll leave it with this as the communication. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Right? Talking with your employees, understanding what's important to them, what they're struggling with, and asking them how you can help them will go a long way towards sending the message that you actually do care about them. You care about what matters to them, what they're valuing, and looking constantly for ways to make sure that you guys are all on the same page. The more you can do that, the easier it's going to be to retain your employees. It starts actually before you hire them, and it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. And this is a continuous investment. Robert mentioned this, your human capital, your human resources, your most important asset, and you've got to continuously and constantly be investing in them in order to make sure that they are happy. When they're happy, they're productive.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. And I think a lot of organizations should think more about what we're talking about today, is how they can make their human resources happier on the job.
Awesome. Well, with that, we want to thank you for joining us today for this episode of the State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. But before we go, Robert, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, to work with you, how would they go about doing that?
They can reach out to me at my email, which is inspireme@roberthilliardcoaching.com, or you can go to my website, Robert Hilliard Coaching, and go there, browse around, and there's a little place there that says work with me. Click on that, send me a form, tell me what you're looking to, the challenge you're having, or some of the goals that you have, and we can schedule a discovery call there. I also have articles. I always forget this. I also have articles on my site, all kinds of articles, and go there, read them, use them, and talk to me about them, all that good stuff.
Awesome. Awesome. And then I would invite you to connect with me at shiftingintoaction.now.site, shiftingintoaction.now.site. There's an opportunity there for you to reach out if you want to get a session with me, a strategy session. We can talk about what your challenges are and how I might be able to help you navigate those challenges, particularly in the areas of leadership development, career development, employee development, and the like. And a couple of ebooks there. My gift to you, started to call it The Joy of Work. That's an upcoming book that is not on my website right now. That is a book that's coming up, but the ebook is called Love Your Work, and it talks about the strategy, 7-step strategy you can use to get to a place for work that you love. One of the things that could be helpful for leaders, again, wanting to help your employees, help them figure out, get the ebook and you could share that with them. The other is Vision of Wellness, and it talks about putting together a plan for wellness, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional wellness. So with that, again, thank you so much for joining us. And our next episode will be our monthly interview. We have a guest, and so look for that next week. Until next time, Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. Stay well and take care.
Bye now.